We appreciate everybody joining us here today. We're going to talk about WeeCat Industries in Enterprise, Alabama. For those of y'all that aren't too familiar with our area, we are located in southeast Alabama. We have a total of 9 schools in our system. We have a kindergarten center. We also have 5 elementary schools, which are grades 1 through 6. We have 2 junior high schools, which house grades 7 and 8. And then we have 1 comprehensive high school, which holds grades 9 through 12. We have just over 7,000 students in our system. And so we're excited that y'all are here to join us. We're going to talk about it's never too early to start, simulated workplace and live work, some of the great things that we're doing actually in our pre-K program. So here with me are our presenters. We have Ms. Deborah Owens, who is the president of WeeCat Industries and is also the special education teacher in our Special Projects Center, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. We've got Mrs. Joy Lee Cain, who is the chief executive officer of WeeCat Industries and is also our director of special education. We have Mr. Josh Laney, who is the senior director of workforce development with the Alabama State Department of Education. And my name is Patrick Cain. I'm one of the assistant superintendents here with Enterprise City Schools. Basically, how we have this presentation formatted is Josh with the State Department will kind of give an overview of where simulated workplace started, what we're doing from a state level, and then we will chime in as Enterprise City Schools, some of the things we're doing across the board, but then later on more specifically in what we're doing in our WeeCat Industries.
Thank you, Patrick. Good morning, everybody, or evening, depending on what time you listen to this presentation. We want to start out with just a little bit of groundwork about the simulated workplace and the history of the simulated workplace in Alabama. We have been training and operating simulated workplaces now for about 4 years. At the state level, we have been really promoting the simulated workplace through grant process to our career tech centers. We have been providing training through SREB to help implement the simulated workplace in all kinds of career and technical programs, and more recently broadening that training to high school principals, middle schools, anybody that is interested in training employability skills in their programs, whether they be career tech programs or academic programs. So we want to just start out by talking about why we're so focused on doing that. As Patrick mentioned, I spend my time working on workforce development, and what I have come to understand really is that the ultimate goal for every community is economic development. Economic development, the technical definition is to either expand or retain industry in your area. But the economic development we're talking about is even more broad than that. We're talking about the overall economic improvement of our community, the individual citizens, the students that we're training now. We're trying to better the economy and the economic situation there. Honestly, so that our students in Alabama can have the opportunity to be successful and stay in their communities and be productive citizens and not have to move somewhere else to go find great jobs and great opportunities. So if our goal is over on the right-hand side of this slide, economic development, we understand that in Alabama and really nationally, but particularly in Alabama, the common barrier to economic development is workforce development. We have an excellent climate in Alabama, even though we occasionally get a half an inch of snow that will shut the state down. We have infrastructure and rail and road and river and land, and we have a very pro-business tax climate. We have all of the components that are attracting major industry to our state of every variety, from automotive to aviation to biomedical, really a wide variety of industry that's moving into Alabama. The one limiting factor that we run into is our workforce. Before a company can come here, they have to know that they have a quality, trained, and trainable workforce. So in order to move to the economic development, we've got to handle the workforce development. And no matter where you start, you always wind up, workforce development is built on a solid education system. And so we've really started to try to convey that message to our educators that their role is preparing these students so that they can be successful in economic development activities by being the quality workforce that our industry needs so that they can come to this area. So that's kind of the idea. And companies, you see the label there, supply chain management. Companies are used to thinking in those terms. If I'm going to build widgets, then I know I need to build X number of widgets, and it's going to take this many raw materials, and I have to get those things in advance. So we have to really start feeding this pipeline. One of the things that, or a few of the things that we're doing at the state level to feed that pipeline and get more students into the correct pathways that they are both interested in, and not only their interests, but things that they can have successful and family-sustaining careers in. Just from a state level, we're doing a career preparedness course, which is a mandatory course for all students to take before graduation that introduces them to all 16 career clusters and at least gives them the opportunity to do some exploration about things that they might not otherwise even know exist as career possibilities. We also have a very successful and growing career coach program. We're up to right about 100 career coaches in the state, and those career coaches work in our high schools. They are sort of like guidance counselors without all the other responsibilities of guidance counselors. They don't do testing. They don't do, IEP coordination. They don't do any of that other stuff. They get to solely focus on career development activities, and they have been an absolute godsend for our career tech programs and for for all of our secondary schools. Those career coaches really help to make sure that the career aspect of student development is getting done. We also have regional career expos. These are really led by our regional workforce development councils, where our local companies and industries will come in and expose the students to, this is the job, this is the industry, these are the types of occupations that are available in your area, because we just find that students really don't know. They may drive past companies their entire life on the way to school and never have any idea what goes on in that place. Industry tours is a big push for us. We're doing a lot of industry tours, and this is partially for the students, but really the bigger push for us for industry tours is for our educators. Just like the students may drive by and not have any idea what's going on in that industry, a lot of our teachers have never set foot in the different companies around, and they really don't know, besides what they think they know, about what goes on in those places. So we try to get our educators in, and we find that as far as speed of return on investment and changing perceptions of going into the workforce, educator industry tours are the fastest turnaround and highest return on investment we can get. And then, of course, guest speakers. Those of you in education know that if you stand in front of a classroom and talk to them all year long, and you're their teacher, they will just listen to about 1/3 of what you say. But if you bring in somebody completely strange to them off the street who says the same things to them that you were saying, they will actually listen to that person off the street and give them credibility. So we really are trying to work with our regional workforce councils and our technical education programs to get the industry folks into the classroom and have them talk to the students about what they need, particularly in the employability skills areas. So, Joel, Indy, I want to talk about how you're doing some of these things specifically in Enterprise City.
Well, ours particularly began when we realized that some of our older students were lacking skills that they needed to participate in the workforce, and we were working with high school students with special needs. And we were looking at those skill gaps and thought, wow, if we had started on some of these skills earlier, we really would have done a great job. So what we've done is we are increasing career awareness for our preschool students. We are looking at bringing in guest speakers and really exposing kids in the preschool setting to all different careers in our local area and even outside of our local area that they possibly could explore. And so the biggest thing is looking at the awareness and then looking at our skill set and what do our kids need. And so back to you, Josh, with the technical skills gap and employability skills gap that we've looked at defining the problem.
All right, so our companies that we meet with regularly around the state, and we ask them, you know, what is it that you need? What are we missing when we're trying to provide you with a ready worker? They break it down into a skills gap, which it falls into two categories. The first is the technical skills gap, and the second is the employability skills. We'll quickly go through some of the things we're doing in Alabama about the technical skills. The technical skills are what we, refer to the hard skills, the ability to weld or the ability to read an EKG. Those things are the technical skills. And while we have focused for a long time in our technical training programs on having those hard technical skills, it turns out those are actually easier to train than the second set. The things that we're doing to address these technical skills gaps, one, we have a huge dual enrollment program in the state. We allocate, last year it was $10.3 million from the state level to provide dual enrollment scholarship funds for students in high school who wanted to participate in technical dual enrollment. So the Alabama Workforce Council identified the technical programs that are of highest need and worked with the community college system. So if a student wants to go and take those classes, there's no cost, no tuition, no out-of-pocket for the school system or the student. It's really been a game changer for us. It's gotten a lot of kids in college early, and as we all know, kids will keep doing what they get started doing, adults the same. Momentum is amazing, and if we can teach them that going to college is not out of reach and get them started in a technical program, our belief is that they're going to continue doing that and start filling that technical skills gap. And then the other big thing we're doing at the state level with technical skills gap is credentialing. It's all well and good if we teach students in our programs how to do a certain thing, but if they can't prove it when they go out into the world with an industry-recognized credential, then it's hard for that employer to evaluate whether they really know how to do that. It's one thing to say I took 3 classes in welding, and it's completely different to say I took welding classes and passed the American Welding Society certification. Those examples there of credentialing are just 3 commonly recognized. We actually have close to 200 different industry-recognized credentials on our list, and those are also fully funded by the State Department of Education, so that if a student wants to take those, there's a grant application that the school system fills out, and there's still no cost to the student or to the school. And both of those things are intended as equalizers to level the playing field for students who may be in areas of our state that are economically disadvantaged. We want them to have the same opportunity to get these technical skills as anybody else in a more affluent part of the state. I know Enterprise City is doing some specific things. Patrick, maybe you want to talk about some examples of those?
Just real quick, some of the technical dual enrollments that we are currently offer, and I'll just give you a couple of examples, are like Josh mentioned with the welding. We actually have dual enrollment courses that are offered at our high school. Our welding as well as our automotive teachers both qualify as adjunct professors with Lurleen B. Wallace, one of the local community colleges in the area. So they have dual roles. They're a professor for the community college, but they're also one of our teachers. So students from grades 10 all the way through 12, like Josh mentioned, get to participate, for example, in the welding and the automotive free of charge, no charge to them whatsoever for the books, any consumable materials, the tuition, all that is free of charge, which has been amazing for not only the students, but for Enterprise City Schools as well. One thing I wanted to piggyback off of what Josh and Jolie mentioned before is in regards to, getting the teachers, the educators themselves out there and understanding what business and industry needs and wants. We've, in education, have always had a fault, in my opinion, that we say, okay, teachers, they need real-world applications, but we've never taken the time to explain to teachers what those applications are. So not only is this an amazing benefit to the students, but I think it's just as important or even more of an amazing benefit to the actual educators who have gone their entire lives, kindergarten through college and possibly a master's, and have never been in what some people would say, quote unquote, the real world. They've just been in education. So if you're telling somebody to use real world applications or how to apply these skills that they're teaching, we're doing a disservice to our employees because they don't know that themselves. So we've actually taken a step back and have had to look at that to find out what we can do for our educators to make sure they're providing what our students need to be successful, in whatever career they so choose. One of the other dual enrollment programs that we're doing is through our EMS, our health science program. We've seen a huge benefit to our students. Just to piggyback, one of the credentials that's not listed up there is a CNA, which has been very beneficial to our students. They go through our health science program. They also do the dual enrollment with actually another community college here in the area, which is Enterprise State Community College. So they get that EMS certification. They can go out and work as that, or they can also get that CNA, which is a certified nurse assistant credential. So when they go out into the workforce and say, hey, I'm applying for the job, you don't have to train me to do this. I've got proof showing that I already have this skill set. So our students actually have a leg up among other students in the area. So those are just a few of the things that we're doing kind of on a secondary level, which I'm really excited that we're going to start speaking more about on the pre-K and elementary levels.
One thing that has been helpful for our preschool classroom is we made contact with our CMP director and had her explain to us what were the skills that were required to meet the credentials in the lunchroom, so that when we're working with food, we work on those skills in the preschool classroom. So that has been ensuring that the teachers are aware of what skills are required for each of those credential options. For the serve safe, for example, with the CNP department, ensuring that we're going ahead and working on those skills that they'll need to hopefully gain that credential if they're interested in that area before they leave high school, which will give them a leg up in their life after school.
So those are some of the things we're working on with the technical skills attainment. Really, that, like I said, that's the easier stuff. It's much easier to define the skills gap as far as technical terms. We either do or don't have the certification, or do or don't know how to do those things. What's more difficult, and what we're really here to talk about today, is the employability skills gap. You will commonly hear employability skills referred to as soft skills. Some people call them just people skills. There's all kind of different names for it. I personally prefer employability skills because that has a little more meaning. When we were trying to define employability skills, you can just Google employability skills, and you will find about 500 different lists and definitions and descriptions. I picked one here from an executive summary this was actually done by McDonald's Corporation. And if you look in item number 2 there's some commonly listed employability skills: communication and interpersonal skills, teamwork, time and self-management, decision-making, initiative-taking, taking responsibility. And the question would be, in a job like McDonald's, if you picture just the most entry-level fry cook at McDonald's, are those things important? And it turns out that no matter what industry we talk to, it could be NASA or it could be McDonald's, they will list the same types of employability skills that it takes for that company and that team at that place to be successful. I picked this particular one because not only was it done by McDonald's, but this one was done by McDonald's in the UK. So the reason I put this one on there is to point out this is not just an Alabama problem with training these employability skills. It's not even a United States problem with training these skills. This is a worldwide problem that we have to do a better job of preparing our students, and we've got to get started doing that earlier so that they know what is expected, what does it take to be successful and be employable in the job market that you're going into. So with this list here, Deborah, if you want to talk about some of the ways that you're working on some of these or other particular employability skills in your program.
Well, what's interesting about this is these soft skills that are needed in order to make you a more productive worker are also some of the basic skills that we have at the preschool level with the state standards. We have social emotional skills, we have time management, we have decision making and those sort of things. So we were able to take the skills that we needed to be able to develop and align them with skills that you need in order to be a productive worker. So it wasn't a matter of taking our curriculum and changing it. They were already embedded into what we were doing. Through the ELP, which is the Early Learning Preschool Profile, it has all of these skills that you need in order to kind of make it through preschool. So what we did is we took these and we said, this is our curriculum anyway, we just are presenting it in a different modality. And, you know, when you're making decisions, you might as well make decisions about coloring or make decisions about time management. So it was almost like we were taking what we already had done, and once, after I had seen and been to Josh's presentation at the transition conference, we were able to say, not only are these skills good for preschool, but if we do them correctly, they will build and be the beginning building blocks for a more employable student at the end.
And universally, we hear from our employers that these are the things that we need. And then when we start talking about solutions to that, if we can all uniformly agree that these are the kinds of skills that we need, one thing we know we have to do is start training them earlier. These are lifelong habits. These are not things that we can wait to do their senior year in a one semester long class and say, oh, by the way, be good at teamwork. That's something that has to be built in as part of the school culture. And as Deborah mentioned, I was presenting this summer at a conference at Auburn University about transitions, and it's about students who are moving out of high school and out of special education programs and into the world of work. And I was talking really about secondary. I had not even thought about the really low grades, the pre-grades in preschool. And I learned that you got to be careful when you open your mouth because somebody might actually be listening. And Deborah was, and brought this stuff home and really did some amazing things with it. And we'll give her an opportunity to talk about some specific examples of that. So just in a nutshell, for those of you that like to keep it simple, this is the, I love this little cartoon about employability skills. The salesman says, have you ever noticed how every customer who speaks with me becomes belligerent? Yes. You think it's a conspiracy? Well, I think it's more of a training issue. Good luck trying to train my customers. We talk about people who have either a mirror or a window, and when they start identifying the problems with what's going on in their relationships with other people, some folks look out of a window and they see all of the problems in their interpersonal relationships and their employability outside of them. It's somebody else or it's the other people, and that's something that we have to overcome. We have to have, instead of a window, a mirror, so that at least some of the time we can look in that mirror and see, well, what is our role in creating this conflict, or what could we be doing to be better employees and be more employable? So that's one of the things that we're just trying to get home to our students as we're training this. On the state level, for a long time, Alabama has been a huge supporter of CTSOs, Career Tech Student Organizations. This is our long-standing and well thought out tradition of all of these different CTSOs. You see training students in leadership, in teamwork, in responsibility, in interpersonal relationships, and public speaking, and interview skills, all of those things that are employability skills. What's more new to Alabama is this simulated workplace, and the simulated workplace is a result of our need to drive this employability training even further and move it to a part of the overall school culture in all of our programs. So as we go through, we'll talk in a moment about what is an employability skill, or what is a simulated workplace and what is it not on the big picture, and then some specific examples from Enterprise City's preschool program. So this slide here lists what is and what is not a simulated workplace, and I'll let Deborah talk about these points and just draw out some of the ones that identify specifically with her program.
Well, what we wanted to do is we wanted to be able to identify what was the most important skill set for each individual child to be successful. So our preschool, let me back up a little bit, is a preschool that consists of a 50-50 ratio. So half of our students have IEPs and half of our students are typically developed in peers. So we're able to learn from each other in that setup. So we're able to, what we're doing is we're constantly assessing and saying, you know, this child has this, and then they in turn can train another child. What we're doing is, we were looking at it, is it a curriculum? Well, it's a way for us to accelerate our standards that we're working on that we need for our IEP children into a center or an activity for them to do, so we're able to give them more practice on that. So we didn't have to actually come up with a curriculum. We kind of took it and we embedded it into what we were doing. But it makes it very easy to take what you've got and to think about it in an environmental, from an environmental standpoint. We also were able to make it student-led. Classroom jobs are old school. I had classroom jobs. We all had classroom jobs. But what we've kind of done is we've kind of taken those and upped the ante on those, with the skill set that you need. You're no longer the line leader. You're the, classroom navigator. We were able to kind of take it and use that terminology for any workplace that we needed in order to help them increase their vocabulary and be able to talk more along the lines of workplace environment.
My favorite, you mentioned vocabulary, which reminded me when I came to do a visit, the letter of the week or the letter of the month, I don't know, the letter of the day at least was Q. And on the board, the word we were learning for Q was quota. And these are preschool kids that are identifying what is a quota, and they had set a target. You want to talk about what that example was? What were you all working on at that time?
Well, we actually had a community job, so to speak. The Downtown Association was hosting their Girls' Night Out to raise awareness and money for breast cancer. And they had 400 swag bags that they were giving to the ladies that bought a ticket. So we were, that was our first job, and we were dividing it up, and everybody was getting their job and what their description was. And we were trying to have a quota. And we talked about a quota as how many bags that we needed to make each day. We had a week to do 400 bags. And I was really just going to be proud if they did 50. We were going to get some ladies from school afterwards to help us for the ones that we didn't get. So we were just really looking for 50. And the first day, they did 78. So we were very proud of that, and we were talking about meeting our quota. So in a student-led environment, they wanted to up their quota for the next day. So it really motivated them, and it helped them to see you can also have a quota and meet it, but then it's also a really good feeling when you exceed it, and then you want to set the standard high for the next time. So they actually, what I thought would take them 5 days to do 400 bags, they actually did them in 2.5.
So this is an example of the kind of thing, and that obviously is not a super technical task that had to be done, but it still was something that could be built right in at the appropriate learning level for those students, didn't require a change in curriculum, but we were able to draw out from the activity that they were doing employability skills. They learned time management. They learned to look at their overall goal and figure out, okay, if we do more today, we'll have fewer to do tomorrow, and we'll get to our goal faster. Those are things that happen in a lot of classrooms of every variety, from pre-K classrooms to math classes. When students have projects, they have to lay out timelines to get them complete. But if we don't take the time to draw out and point out to those students and teach those things as employability skills, then they don't necessarily recognize that that's what they're learning by doing that. Holding students accountable for completing projects on time is huge. I don't believe in late work. That's not part of the simulated workplace model. One of the other points here is about the high-level academic and technical learning as part of the simulated workplace. This is not, it's not the 1970s vocational school where we're sending the kids who can't read and can't do math. If you want to participate in a simulated workplace now and want to have a true simulated workplace, it's going to be challenging. I mean, just look at the example from quota in pre-K. That's challenging vocabulary for pre-K students. That holds true if you continue this all the way through middle school or go up into high school levels. The simulated workplace has to be founded on high-level academic and technical learning. It can't just be all soft skills. It can't be all employability skills. Those two things have to go hand in hand. So there's no watering down of the curriculum. There's no removing or changing what we're teaching. There's only drawing out and enhancing stuff that we're already doing. A couple of quick things about the simulated workplace. in a regular simulated workplace, students don't go, and this is talking about CTE classes, career tech classes, they don't go to a welding class or robotics class. They go to a business industry learning environment. The classroom is set up as a company. When we did introductions, you heard at the very beginning that, let's see, Deborah is the president of WeeCat Industries, and Joylyn is the chief executive officer of WeeCat Industries. Those are, you know, obviously not the titles they get paid for, unfortunately, but those are the titles that are built into this model of setting up the classroom as a company. And then within that company model in the classroom, the students also have particular roles, and they get assigned particular jobs. Can you point out some of the jobs
Sure.
and roles at that?
Sure. What we did first is we decided that we would identify what activity or what skill every student is affected by in the preschool classroom. So snacks, we all have snacks. So putting together snacks for our 20-something students, for our aides and teachers was laborious. So we decided that we would give them the opportunity to put their snacks together. So we just kind of took it and did a task analysis and broke it down into every little part. What do you need? Here's what we need to be set. This is what needs to happen so that we can get started. So we have a setup team. We have a quality control inspector who makes sure that all the Ziploc bags are closed correctly. And there's a cute story. After we did it, we did our snacks. The next week they were pulling snacks from the snack bag, and some of the cheese curls were very stale. And so we were able to talk about quality control and doing your job. They had not been sealed correctly. So now we have a quality control manager, and now because of the amount of snacks that we do, there's an assistant to that. If you volunteer for those programs, then you're able to, you work at a different pay scale. They get paid with WeeCat bucks that they use for the school store on Fridays to purchase items that they want. We have the students that take down. We have the prep team. We have the procurement teams that make sure that we have the right size bags and that every table has the right amount of bags. We have a floor runner. So when it's an assembly line fashion, so when our three teams need something, the floor runner is able to go and get more napkins or another cup or something like that. And everybody knows their job, but everybody gets to rotate in that position. So we're constantly doing on-job assessments to say this is a skill for you. You know, this works well for you, or if you're not a student that is into details, then we're able to give you another job based on another strength.
So the task analysis identifies in the beginning what particular skill sets it takes to do those jobs. And then as the students move through them, they find that I might be better at certain types of jobs than at others. I might be better at that very detail-oriented thing than I am at this other more general, you know, free-floating, have to be quick in response type thing. So that's helping these students learn something at an extremely early age that honestly, it takes a lot of adults a long time to figure out what are my strengths and what kind of areas am I good at working in. And then I never cease to be amazed at the vocabulary that's being used, talking about, I mean, we have a procurement specialist, and that's somebody's job in a pre-K classroom. That's a lot of words for a pre-K student.
Well, and it's just what we found, it's just a matter of introducing the word and explaining the definition and then giving it a real world effect. The procurement person is the person, if you ask any of our students, that make sure that everybody has what they need. And that's pretty much, you know, in a company, what you need. And that person also makes sure that we have invoices where they count. They have the numbers are listed 0 through 30, and then there's a spot to write the number. So if you're not at the point where you can write the number, then you can circle the number of bags that you did. And then there's a spot at the bottom of the invoice for you to practice writing that number. So those are all really preschool developmental skills that we would be working on. We've just found a different way, and they love practicing their invoices. So then we number the invoices, and they put the invoices. We have our office clerk who takes the invoices and keeps them in the right order. So, you know, that's alphabetizing, numerical orders, sequencing, things like that, that we had to be working on in the preschool environment anyway, and this just gives everybody skin in the game as to make sure, because if you are the if you're the quality clerk and you have 40 right bags, then you want to make sure that the right number was recorded for you. And so it's a lot of teamwork, it's a lot of checking and rechecking. And really, if you can develop an employee that is able to work with a team and embraces the checks and balances system and wants, you know, what's best for the whole company, then, you know, those are the kind of employees
that's what our companies
that
are
they
asking.
want, right?
So in the simulated workplace, you know, if we're trying to train these things, what do these things look like in the real world? And here's just a list of some examples. There's an application and interview process. So in the classroom setting, if a student wants to have a particular job, they have to demonstrate the ability to do that thing, whether it's counting, or in a more advanced class, it might be, you know, welding, or it might be healthcare. It could be any of our computer sciences. This can be applied anywhere across the board, which is why the pre-K example is so amazing to me. If you can do it in a pre-K classroom, there's no other class you can't do it in, or not just class, but overall program that you couldn't do it in. So application and interview process, the formal attendance process. I love y'all's attendance. Will you tell them about that?
Well, each student has a badge that is similar to the badge that our staff wears, and it also has a number on the bottom. And the number on the bottom is actually their number that will be assigned to them from kindergarten to 12th grade for lunch and things like that. So when they come in, they get their badge, and then they clock in with their number. So we're working on number recognition, we're working on sequencing, we're working on copying. So they get their number and punch it in. And then when we go to work, they have a time card that they slide in and punch, and they have to put it in and out of the same spot. But what we found with these badges is they have a little clasp at the end that you have to pinch and put on your lapel or your shirt. And that's great fine motor skills that we're working on for some of our students that we've identified that have a delay in that area. It's very, very good, and it's purposeful. So that's what we're able to do. And what we found at first is the ones that could do it kind of showed the other ones how to do it, and now everybody basically can squeeze their clip and put it on. And so they're able, that's just something that happened out of a natural consequence that we were very happy with.
I like the word purposeful, and that kind of sums up the things that are on this list here. Everything here that is being simulated in the classroom is done in a purposeful way. Now, we don't randomly drug test our pre-K kids, but in a lot of our simulated workplaces, especially at the secondary level, some of our simulated workplace, the local school systems have decided to implement drug testing policies. One thing, unfortunately, that we hear constantly from employers is, you know, that person may show up and they may be the greatest whatever in the world, and I hire them, and then 6 weeks later when they take a random drug test, I have to let them go, and I've invested a huge amount of money into their training and their onboarding process, and now I have to go back and restart that search to fill that position again, and I've lost all of that time and training. It's really costing me a lot of productivity. Unfortunately, that's just the real world that we live in today, and so we have to start training our students very early on. Even if we don't actually test them in the simulated workplace, the manuals that we develop for our secondary school simulated workplace programs always include a drug testing policy, so that if we were to drug test you and you were to test positive, here's what would happen, here's what we would do.
And we began the drug-free awareness with Red Ribbon Week, and begin with activities such as that, so to promote drug-free environment at that age.
So they know that this is something that's not just going to be an activity we do once a week. This is built in all year long. It's part of what we have to do in order to keep going forward.
And we're able to have pictures. We have pictures and they have drawings that they put in their portfolio. So as we go through that, we've talked about introductions, we've talked about drug-free, we've talked about serve-safe precautions. And so we were able to, for example, in our STEM class, our STEM teacher did a experiment with germs and apples. So we did that, timed that right around when we started talking about ServPro. So they could see that as the germs grew on the apple, that's why we need to wash our hands, wear our gloves, and do that. So it was able to, you're able to embed these things into your curriculum.
One thing that we found was very natural is the safety training. We have students with visual impairments and hearing impairments, and part of teaching safety, not only is it important to have a safe, work-free work environment, it's also important to be aware of obstacles that may be of safety concern for students who aren't able to see everything. And we've had to really work with the other students and helping each other out, and I think that's been a fun and rewarding experience watching. Our primary focus was on safety training in the workplace, and it turned into being aware and considerate and having teamwork and all of those other skills. So everything just constantly goes back to each other. One thing, Deborah, we talk about the portfolio system that we have set up for the students. Everything that we do with students with IEPs is data-driven. We have to have data. We have to have work samples to determine, are the students being successful and are they attaining the skills that they need to be successful?
When we started the portfolio system, and I looked at, I kind of tried to parallel what was happening in the middle school and high school, we decided that we would have a portfolio that really, if they could explain it and could tell you what it meant and could draw it, or we use it journaling for it, then if they could explain it, then we knew that they understood it. So we've been able to set up a portfolio system where we talk about serve safe, and then we have the experiment in it. We talk about we just went through interviews and how you interview. And so we have lots of pictures of them shaking hands and offering their hands and saying the right things. And so as they pull out their portfolios and you go through it with them, they can tell you, oh, this is serve safe, this is what we do for to make sure that our snacks stay clean and that we stay healthy. Today, on the way, before I came over here, Tuesday is our snack day. That's when we work for snacks, and we're really talking about, we have the cases of the flu going around, so we were talking about ways that we could make this even safer than we normally do. So they got out their book and got together, and we're talking about how can we make this even more safe, and they came up with that everybody, you would wash your hands and then you would have Germex there. So they actually came up with, we usually wash our hands and get to the table and have Germex, but they wanted to do it before they clocked in so that they wouldn't leave any germs on the clock in card, which is, that's problem solving, and that's a good idea. So that's what we do with the portfolio, and then they're very proud of their portfolio to be able to go back and talk about it, and this is when we did this, and it's just a representation of all that we've gone through, and at this point it's their resume, and so they like talking about that.
All right, so just kind of to wrap up those points, what is a simulated workplace? A simulated workplace boils down into activities and practices that are carried out in a way that draws out the employability skills from the training that we're already providing. A couple of those activities, just examples, are teamwear, and I wish y'all could see, these are the just cutest little children in the world with their WeeCat industry T-shirts on, clocking in and out, call-out procedures if you're going to be absent, letting somebody know. These are all the kind of daily activities that go on that are important to our employers, and they set the tone for the classroom as being a simulated workplace. And then there are some things that are more practices. They're long-term. They're not one-and-done activities. Chain of command, knowing who the boss is and knowing what your responsibilities are and knowing how to report things properly. Safety protocols, we just talked a bit about safety. All of those activities and practices can be built in any classroom, in any kind of program, and start to really just draw out those employability skills that are already there. Just quickly, one example of one of the practices that we really train in our simulated workplaces is called 5S. And 5S is a philosophy, it's a way of organizing the workplace, and it's very heavily used in manufacturing. These are just some examples of companies that use the 5S philosophy. And if you look at what 5S looks like in a classroom setting, this is in an industry setting, these kinds of boards, and this is at one of our Alabama companies, it's a board that shows, all right, here's who's present today. This is that person's responsibility. These are the things they're going to be doing. Notice the top line there, clean to inspect. It's all about keeping the place organized and efficient and ready for action. There are a few examples here of things that are not 5S compliant. This is a counselor's office. Those of you who are in education, you may have a counselor or a principal or even a teacher whose office looks like this, and if you ask them, wow, your office is a train wreck, they'll tell you, well, I know where everything is. I know right where my stacks are and that kind of thing. And that may very well be true. That person may be able to draw out the exact sheet of paper they need from that mess. I doubt it. But more importantly is if we're teaching employability skills and we're teaching students to work as a part of a team, just imagine the scenario where somebody has to come in behind you and continue the work that you're doing on a second shift or a third shift, or the next, the next cycle of employees come through, you've retired and you left that for the next person in line. Some of our shops, pre-5S were, there we go. This is an electronics shop. I would venture to say I don't want to take my very expensive high-dollar piece of television or video equipment or whatever to a place that looks like this to have it worked on. One of our small engines repairs, and these may be the most talented people in the world, but the question becomes, as an employee, if this is what my place looks like, what kind of message am I sending to my potential customers? Or as an employer, do I want to hire somebody that thinks that this is the okay work environment? How much am I going to lose in lost time and efficiency trying to work in a place like this just because I spent 10 minutes looking for the appropriate wrench to do whatever the task was that I was working on? And so our employers can't tolerate that. They need better examples of preparedness. And this is just another one. This is a culinary kitchen where they may have been producing the most fabulous food in the world, but if you'd walked into that kitchen and seen it, you would not want to eat that food even if it was really good quality. So 5S teaches our students to sort, set and order, shine, standardize, and sustain. And those are the tenets of organizing, cleaning, straightening, and keeping your workplace ready so that the next person can use it. A lot of these things have been employed here in this WeeCat program, not necessarily by this name, but they have been built into the structures. How are y'all organizing and using these kind of procedures?
Well, when we use our invoices, we have many clipboards, and there's an outline on where they go. So when the person that is on the cleanup team is getting the clipboards back together, there's an outline where they go. We have once the snack bags are inspected, we have an inspected stamp. And so the outline of where the stamp goes there. There's specific drawers for invoices and things like that. So that's kind of how we set everything in order. When we go through and standardize, we make sure that, when you're counting, you count the sweet snacks versus the salty snacks, and those have specific spots to go. So when a teacher makes an order, then they can fill that order, and all the sweet snacks have to be in one spot, and the savory snacks in another. We also make sure every day that we're clocking in and that we're wearing our badge and that we're leaving our badge. And knock on wood, we haven't lost any badges yet. So
that's pretty good.
So they, but it's where they can see it. The badge holder is where their book bags are, and so they'll remind each other if somebody comes back to circle time and we do closing right before we leave. They'll say, "Oh, you forgot your badge," and so those are the kind of things that are natural consequences when you set up that system.
And the most important one on this entire list to me is the last one, the sustain, making it part of the daily work and it becomes a habit, so that just like you mentioned, the students recognize each other. When you forgot to put your badge up, then somebody else knows it and it's part of their habit and they're able to remind them. A couple of pictures from shops that have been treated with the 5S philosophy, and just like you heard Deborah was talking about, there's an outline of the place on the wall where the clipboard goes. Well, in this particular tool room, there's an outline of each tool, and it's pretty easy to visually inspect at the end of the class. All right, I'm missing these particular pieces of equipment. We need to get them put back up, and tomorrow when it's time to set up and begin working again, I don't have to hunt all over the place to find the right level or the right hammer. I can just immediately go and lay my hands on one. So that's just one of the practices. There are quite a few tenets of the simulated workplace that we train on, but that's one easy example. If you are an administrator and have supervision of career and technical programs, ask yourself, go down and look at their tool rooms, look at their shops, and ask yourself how efficient and how organized those rooms are. And it might be something that you want to investigate. 5S is really one of the starting points that we do with our technical programs, because the teachers can really see how it benefits them once it's all set up and squared away, how much time they save and how much easier it makes their lives. And then over time, we start to train our students that this is how it's supposed to look. This is what right looks like. And then when they go and become employees, they expect to work that way in a work setting. So starting it at the very early ages and carrying that on through our technical programs in secondary is really one of the key components.
And I can say, preschoolers, we have a school box, and in that school box are your crayons and your glue and your scissors, and it was always just such a chore because they wouldn't put it in the right spot or they not put everything in it. And I can see how keeping their WeeCat Industries area neat and orderly has transferred into their school boxes. And they know where their box is. They know it's the third one. They know we put the names on one end. There's one person that makes sure that all the names are where you can see it. And that also just naturally occurred from being exposed to it through WeeCat Industries.
That's great. And there are a few other things that naturally occur through this, and they are the results of this whole thing, the local results, the thing that impacts the kids. Why don't y'all, Joylyn and Deborah, talk about some of the results and the pride, the things that have gone on in your program?
Well, the first picture at the top left, that is a team that has completed their snacks. You can see the little snacks in the blue tray. And the bag on the left-hand side is where they count them into, and that's an invoice that they're all filling out together. One of those students is able to write numbers up to 30. One of those students is able to recognize numbers up to 30. And one of those students is just working on counting. So they're all working together, but there's a spot for everybody on that invoice to take part. We had 400 bags to construct, but in each bag, there were probably 10 or 15 coupons and cutouts and advertisements. So what we did is we just kind of set up an assembly line, and that's what the students on the top right-hand are doing. They're going through, they took it, went around, clipped it together, and then we put that into the bag. And then my favorite picture is on the bottom, and that's one of our students that we used. We tried to figure out how we were going to incorporate him into our assembly line. And as you can see, we draped his entire chair with all the bags. So he was the starting point. When you've got a new bag, you got it off his wheelchair, and then he was the beginning of the assembly line. And what was cute about that is we were able to incorporate and include everyone, but the students were just, anytime we do that student's job, because he is best suited because he can carry the heaviest. And that's what they think about him, is that how strong he is to carry all those bags. And we had probably 40 or 50 bags on him at one time, and they were just in awe that, that he could handle those bags. So it just incorporates and has a natural consequences that are just beneficial and that you really could not contrive.
So in the classroom, that took something that was a barrier for that student and turned it into a thing that he could have a personal point of pride in, and that's that's his now ability transformed from his disability. So that's the kind of thing that can be done in as far as in the classroom results. Then for the school system and for the overall school program, there's also other benefits, and this is one example here. Charlie, you want to talk about the publicity that has come from this, or the
We have. We've had a lot of local businesses, and we're currently working with a church, working on putting together some bags for them. A dentist office putting together bags, which has also opened up the avenue for more career awareness. He came in and talked about good dental hygiene, about being a dentist. We talked about the toothbrushes, the dental floss, all of the things that went into the bag, how important it is to go to your dental appointment and things like that. So we're just continuing to get to see all of the different doors that are opening for us. And we have received a lot of, we've received some donations for a library and different things like that. So it continues to open the door for different opportunities for the kids that we may not have had the opportunity to do otherwise.
And it's hard to talk about brushing your teeth and personal hygiene in the preschool, and that's part of the ELP. So this just opened up that we were able to talk about brushing your teeth. You were able to show that you could do that, and so it also has just helped us embrace different ways to make sure that we are compliant with our standards.
So I think the moral of that story is success breeds success. I mean, you went out on a limb, you did something that was a little bit unusual, you implemented this, well, a lot unusual. you implemented this program in a pre-K environment, and it brings that publicity, which is great just for the notoriety, but that's not the point. The reason that publicity is important is because exactly what you mentioned, the other people in the community who now recognize opportunities for them to be involved in ways they can support your school system. And that has been universally true in our implementation of the simulated workplace, where people have taken it and really run with it in their programs and in their schools. It has attracted, people are attracted to winners, and people want to go and participate in programs that they see that are making a difference in that child and in that potential future employee. So this publicity thing is not just for, wow, we got our picture in the paper. It is to the benefit of the students because of all the additional doors it opens. And the last thing I want to point out is all of this happens, and all of this publicity and all of this real-world work happens because there's a real-world project associated with it. And that's a key point that I don't want to let slide by. When we set up simulated workplace environments, it is critical that they be working in a project-based setting that is real-world, that they can see real outcomes from, that the student can have real pride in, so that they know they did something that mattered. A lot of things that we call in school projects are not really projects. They're just activities. They don't have a tangible outcome at the end that is something of value beyond just a thing that gets graded. And so using this simulated workplace model and being able to build in live work activities and real project-based learning has been a real benefit to all of our simulated workplaces across the state. Patrick, you got any other parting comments? Or?
No, I just want to take the time to thank Josh, obviously, to kind of set this ball rolling. Like I mentioned before, that transition conference in Auburn, and then the great and amazing job that Deborah and Joy Lee have done actually implementing this within our system. I would like to say that all of our career and technical education programs at our high school are at this level, but to be perfectly honest, that is still a area of opportunity of growth for us there. So not only has this able to breed positive publicity in the community and business and industry now wanting to partner with education instead of vice versa, education trying to get in the doors with them, they're actually trying getting their foot in the doors with us, which is wonderful. It's also kind of lit a fire underneath our secondary programs that, okay, seriously, 4-year-olds can do this, and, you know, I've got a class full of 16 through 18-year-olds, and they're not at this level yet. So it's kind of up the ante for us, which I think competition breeds success. So it's able our other programs to grow and be better because of the hard work of Deborah and Joy Lee. So I do want to go on the record saying thank you for their hard work in implementing this program so successfully.
Absolutely. And in closing, the manual that we provide is available. The website is there, and you can go, and the whole manual is available online. You can download it as a PDF. It's getting a little bit dated now. You know, we need to update the governor's picture, and we need to update some people in there, but the content is still is good to go. So feel free, anybody who wants to investigate that, download it. We don't copyright it or charge a fee for it. Get it and go for it, because I think we're all in this economic development game together, and the more people we have pulling in this direction, the better off we're going to be.
And let me just say, it was very helpful to help us align what we needed to align and kind of give us a good starting point to know, okay, we need to do this or call it this. So it was very helpful.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for your time. You can certainly reach out to any of us, I think, at any point if you have questions. If you're close, if you're anywhere nearby, make a point, come visit, come see the kids. They're much cuter than you can imagine, and it really leaves a lasting impact when you see these things in action.
All right, thank y'all so much. There's our contact information, like Josh said, so we're happy to answer any questions that you may have, and, you know, of course, we'd love for y'all to come visit. Thank y'all again.